Welcome to day 2 of the Institute. We hope that you all had a great evening. Thank you for some of you who joined us at Count It Out last night. We are so excited for the panel that we have planned for you this morning. Equally as important is hello, literacy leaders. Can you wave your hand if you are a literacy friend that's here today? Hi. We are going to talk about systems today, and we do that work of systems together, and we are so excited to be in collaboration with you all. Before we get started on that panel, just so that we have access to the movie of Count It Out, we're going to show the trailer up here so that if you have not had the opportunity to watch Count It Out yet, you know a little bit of what our friends are going to come up here and talk about.
If you think about the 20th century, then you're thinking, well, you need to know enough math to function at the post office. But in the 21st century, we're in a different ballgame here.
The world that we're moving toward has math everywhere. And I don't mean this in like a, there's math everywhere, kids, kind of a way. I mean something concrete and kind of dark.
You've seen the math just fly out of control with this virus.
Social media privacy.
Carnage on Wall Street.
When you consider the issues that we as a society face, most of them are fundamentally mathematical.
The algorithm, AI.
Health insurance, climate change.
There's no way to think about gerrymandering without thinking about math. Math is central to what democracy will or will not become.
We have a math crisis in America because we have taught math in a way that alienates people.
It made me not want to go to school.
We mispredict who can and who can't do what based on socioeconomic status. We mispredict based on race. We mispredict based on gender.
For as long as this algorithm misrepresents me, I'm gonna be denied parole and I'm gonna stay in prison.
There is a view that if you're not going to go into science and engineering, finance and accounting, then you don't need to do math. And that is a very narrow view of what math is.
Social media platforms are trying to limit the spread of conspiracy theories.
What we need now is the ability to discern what counts as good information and what doesn't.
That's what math brings us. It's a language for proving things.
We need to be able to understand when people are making particular kinds of arguments, whether or not there's data to support them.
99% of the ISIS and Al-Qaeda content that we take down on Facebook, our AI systems flag before any human sees it.
Did you know that if you insert a single statistic into an assertion, people are 92% more likely to accept it without question? Everyone is capable of mathematical thinking. It's like an inheritance you get just for being human.
It's not just about numbers and equations. It's about thinking logically about the whole human world.
Whether you're trying to win a basketball game, find a cure for cancer, everything ends up being a math problem.
The question is, how is it that we can begin to use math to actually understand the world and then to also change the world?
On the slide behind me are the participants of our panel. I'll invite them to come on up here. Facilitating our panel this morning, we have Sonia Malik. We also have on our panel Dr. Amy Noel Parks, Dr. Macy Golson, Dr. Deborah Ball, and Kent ISD math consultant Marcus DJ. Give them a round of applause.
Thank you so much for being here today and lending your voices to this important conversation. We're going to start off with opening remarks. So each of you will have about a minute to share a key insight or a reflection from the film, maybe something that struck you or something that you feel is a key idea to send to our work moving forward. Anyone can begin, whoever's ready.
All right, well, I'll start. I saw this film for the second time yesterday. I think others may have seen it more than that. And the last time I saw it was at the beginning of April. So one thing that struck me last night was how much just the intervening months shaped how I saw it. And I was really contemplating that because some of the things that were being said and even seeing some of the images hit me very hard in April, but they really already seemed different, just whatever that is, 4 or 5 months later, which maybe we'll talk more about. A second thing I was thinking about was, again, being very struck with the fact that the originators of the movie were thinking about honoring Bob Moses, whom I had the opportunity and the honor to work with a number of different times. At the University of Michigan, he came and excuse me, conducted a lab class like the one we do with elementary, but did it for secondary students. And I had the opportunity to watch him working with young people. And I was very struck with, sorry. I was struck with a point that he made over and over again about how it was important to build the demand side, that we needed to think about the young people and centering the young people and building the demand both for them and not for them, but by them and by their families to demand something different from what we serve up in terms of mathematics and the ways that we interact with them. And I thought about that each time his image was on the screen and he was talking, and I just wanted to hear his voice and the kind of urgency he brought to centering young people and their rights to be asking for and demanding a different kind of experience and a different kind of mathematical diet. And the last thing that I would like to talk more about this morning is how much, although I just said I was really thinking about the current moment, if you want to think about it that way, I also thought how deeply historical and political and social the issues that are being discussed there, like looking backwards as well as forwards. It's a lot about forwards, what we're going to need, what we're going to have to be in this time. But these issues have really long roots, and they have long roots in our bodies as educators, our minds, and our ways of thinking, that I don't think that just learning new things or having new visions will actually overcome. I think that we have to think about what we do with the history we carry, histories, and what that means for learning. And I think that has a lot to do with what we're doing together here, is that learning can't only be about layering on new thoughts and new ideas and new practices. It's going to require a lot of unlearning. So I'll stop with that.
I guess we'll just go in order. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Oh, there we go. Thank you. I think I'm in the unique position of being in the film, and so I get to, or at least I'll start by saying something critical, because I don't know that you all want to say something critical first, which is to say that I think the film is an important film. I think we need films that make available the kinds of issues that we deal with in math education every day. And at the same time, I wonder a bit about opportunities that were missed in the film, wherein mathematics was presented as the problem and then the solution. So kids aren't learning mathematics. Well, what we need is more mathematics. People are locked up because of algorithms. What we need is for people to know what the algorithms are, not to actually stop and interrogate whether or not we want mathematics controlling those parts of our life, right? And so I think there was an opportunity that was missed for us to do the kind of deeper social and political work about what it is that we are giving and gifting children and families and communities as math educators. Like, what is it that we actually are handing over, and are we still giving too much prestige to math to control our society in ways that we actually that don't deliver on the promise of who we are as Michiganders, as US citizens, et cetera. And I think, to Deborah's point, it's really difficult for me to think about what math education I want for our future and for right now, when so much of the social contract in my mind, and I don't say this lightly, I don't know where everyone lives, how you think, how you vote, how you come, but this is a special community to me. And it means something that I can be invited back year after year, so I don't say this lightly. But to say that, what difference does it make that we have kids that can learn and do mathematics in a society where basic fundamental rights and the social contract that we have come to rely upon is being broken? That's the thing that scares me.
Hey. So I wasn't in the movie, but I'm unhinged, and so I'm also going to jump in with critique. I had so many feelings watching this movie. And I think one thing, like, initially that stood out to me is, for people who didn't see it, very early in the movie, there's a story a mother is telling about her daughter who was not allowed to eat lunch at school because she hadn't finished her math, so she had to stay in the classroom to do it, which of course is horrible, and I think that should never happen. But also, we live in a time now where SNAP benefits are cut, and so children all over the country are going to be going hungry whether they do their math or not. Similarly, funding for school lunch has been cut. Children are going to go hungry whether they do their math or not. Like right now, Texas is trying to gerrymander 5 extra seats in Congress. I don't think it's because people don't understand the math, right? Like, if only people knew the equations behind this, then they wouldn't be making this decision.
It deals with infinity, by the way.
See?
To this.
I don't understand the equations behind it, but I know what it will do. I know what it will do to my kids, and I know what it will do to other people's kids. And so the demands on us as educators are so big right now. They're bigger than math, which is maybe a weird thing to say in this room, although half of our people are literacy. Guess what? They're bigger than literacy too, and I know literacy thinks nothing is bigger than literacy, but this is. So I think what I want to do in roomfuls of educators right now is to think about, what is it we need to do, can do, to mobilize for our kids, and I think it means having some uncomfortable conversations in our communities.
So I think of those early days once we graduated from our pre-service programs and how much passion and excitement we had to be educators. And I think what happens over time is that we realize the complexities and the pressures that educators feel. And that movie last night really helped open up and reinvigorate that excitement we had for our kids, our children, our humanity more than anything else. And I think the problem that we're having is we're recognizing the complexity, and we don't know those right pressure points on where to push to help our kids, to help ourselves, to help our institutions overall. So it's hard to navigate those complexities, and we can get lost in the noise and all the scary things that are out there too. And it's good that we have people like this and events like this, because we can push on each other's thinking in different ways and try to find what that common ground is for our common vision. So I think about math education specifically, which I'm representing today, and I think a lot about what can open the doors for students. The visuals of that algebra pathway and all the gatekeeping structures that are in the way for our kids to not pass algebra and not understand algebraic thinking, it's because we've lost their humanity in the process. We haven't recognized them as people, and we try to just teach them the math content. So I'm excited about these events to push on our thinking in certain ways, but also come up with a common vision by deeply thinking about them and coming up with a coalesced vision, but then the structures that are there to support them as well. So it's easy to get lost in the noise, but I really appreciate this space, these people up here, so we can identify where we need to go from here.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the opening remarks. We are a group of Michigan education leaders from across the state. Amy shared an idea of something that we can do collectively. What else might we be able to do collectively to sustain this movement in Michigan?
Yeah, I can try to start. I feel like this is going to be so ironic, but I feel like stop looking at us and like look at the people at your table. Like we are, like I'm a member of a community. I'm a member, I'm doing canvassing. As much as I am a leader, I am very much like just another community member who's trying to figure out how to advocate for my child who has special needs, right? Like I am just like you and a parent, and I think we start by thinking locally and looking at each other to do the work and not looking to a person or a leader or an individual, but looking towards each other, like what can we do? And there's, other mother friends of mine who have children with special needs, and we are figuring out like, how do we go give workshops, and how do we do this canvassing, and how do we be a part of this political piece? So part of it to me is, yes, it happens in the day-to-day work that you do, but it also happens just inside of your community and how you decide to engage. But I also think that, I guess the last thing that I'll say, just to give space to everyone else, is that whether or not you believe it, you are in this room and you've got power, and I would just love for you to see that and then move in a way. Do you all feel that? I'm like actually asking you a question. Do you feel, it's not rhetorical, do you feel like you have power? Yeah. And the tepidness of your yes means kind of, but I don't know if I can use it. I don't know what the risks are. And I think I think we just have to be able to sustain a movement. You have to know that you have power and that there are risks to making certain decisions. But I really believe, just because of the things that we see and the say and the conversations and connections that I have, that with the folks in this room, that trust yourselves and do it. And if you take a risk, I think we will all be here together to support each other, yeah? Can you say yes to that one? Okay, yeah. So I think that's what it takes, is the community piece and supporting one another.
I'd like to pick up on that because I think, can you hear me? We live in an incredibly individualistic culture. And I think that that idea is actually complicated because on one hand, we are individuals, we have power to act as individuals. And I've been reflecting a little bit about the multiple communities of which I'm a part and my responsibilities to act in those settings, to speak out, because I'm in several settings where people don't share views and we're avoiding talking about those. And they're everything from teaching and math and children and how we see children, but of course the larger political context right now. And I'm thinking about what my role needs to be beyond my role as an educator, to your point. At the same time, this is not a country or a society in which we typically act as collectives, especially diverse collectives, where people don't all hold the same view. And I worry that if we don't learn to do that differently this time, we're actually going to be sitting here 10 years from now, not further ahead in any of the ways we're talking about. I think it's time for really rethinking what the norms of this cultures, society are. And I think that does begin in our classrooms. So our schools are also built to reinforce individualism over and over again. It's competitive. We talk about cheating when people collaborate. We are all focused on test scores. And yet you see a film like this where we're supposed to feel all inspired about all the beauty of mathematics and its power and its interest and its engagement. But, next 2 weeks from now when we start school, we're going to be back to serving children a diet that has nothing to do with any of that and is highly individualistic. So to your point about power, the change actually begins right there inside the micro interactions we have in our communities and in our classrooms. And I really think that a mistake we keep making is not dealing with the ambiguity or the tension involved in honoring teachers' autonomy and freedom to act, but what kind of responsibility that brings to be thinking deeply about the larger environment that education contributes to. We're the only profession that builds the next generation. And I think right now is a moment to think really hard about what it means to collaborate and cooperate and think together and not all do our own thing all the time, and yet not give over to constraints of other people telling us what to do. That's a really hard problem of how we act together and have autonomy. And I think we haven't grappled with that enough to build the kind of power we need to have collectively.
Could I say something just to, yeah, I want to clap for that, what Deborah said, because you said it so much better than what I did, which is it happens in the small places in the micro. That's one thing that I'm like lifting out of what you said that I was trying to say probably inartfully. And then the second piece is that I think the notion of like how collectives work together doesn't mean that we all have to be thinking the same thing. Like that is a thinking trap. Where's Allison? That's a thinking trap in which there has to be complete uniformity in order for progress to be made. And I really believe that we know how to do collective work and still maintain our own kind of nuance, our own perspectives, but still be pushing towards a common good. So I don't buy that we all have to be lockstep thinking the same thing. We use certain things to help guide us in a direction, but it doesn't mean that we have to give up parts of ourselves or the ways that we think. So I hope that.
So I was just gonna say, so Deborah just said sometimes we do.
It's about compromise sometimes, right? So.
Yeah, but what I was gonna say was these two people like walk that talk. Like one of my favorite things about coming to these places is seeing Deborah and Maisie argue about like so much. And you can see like how close they are as friends and as colleagues, but they're both completely unafraid to say, no, I disagree with that. And I think that like we're not awesome at that in elementary and early childhood, and that's something like I continually learn from them. And then I think to like build on what they're saying, like as I think about moving forward, I'm trying to think of it in this double vision, sort of the way they're talking about, where part of my work every day is trying to make classrooms more joyful for kids, like whatever that looks like. I get up in the morning and I'm like, this is my work. And I've been preparing for that work for 30 years, right? So like, you would not know it to look around at public schools right now, but like, I actually like know something about this. But in the last few years, I've had to accept that that can't be all of my work. And so I've had to get educated about things that I haven't really ever spent any time talking about. So this is like a super specific recommendation. You don't have to do it. But there's a podcast called 5 to 4, which is about Supreme Court cases. And like at a time when the Supreme Court is abolishing the Department of Education, is saying like we can't read books in elementary schools that represent the families of our kids, I feel like I have to know something about the Supreme Court that I didn't know before. So like you may decide there's something else you have to be educated about, but I think we have to learn something about the things we haven't been living in if we're gonna act in the world.
Recently I had an interesting conversation with someone from K-Connect. It's an industry workforce partnership the other day. And this principal, young black male, was really conscious of the fact that running a school building and academics is very different than changing institutions. And so our question with our industry partners is where do we put our energy and time for that impact? It feels like our conversation is flowing into both spaces, and I think that's what we have to navigate as educators. That's our complexity. So when do we decide to push? When do we advocate forward? I can't help but lean on the learning from the last 4 or 5 years with this group, knowing, doing, and becoming, right? We don't just start by saying, I'm gonna be a strong advocate in doing these things. Becoming comes later. You got to try some things. Talk in the teacher's lounge, press on your neighbors, ask some questions, and then that identity starts to form after that too. So I think for the point of ISDs, local districts, what we can do for that change is something small. Deborah's talking about those micro moments. And if you're not doing turn-in talks, you're not seeing math as a broad creative subject, you're not honoring those diverse perspectives, that's a great place to start. We need to have those common principles of learning being messy and driving change forward that's centered on students. So if you're a principal, maybe we look at more coherent systems and experiences for teachers that align to those principles too. Teachers, open up that classroom dialogue, right? I think we can look at those specific moves to embrace our classrooms and our communities and our larger districts as well to make that change. But it does take that sustainability. We've got great tools and resources from these organizations to have that common vision and execute for our kids. I think that's something that we don't want to lose sight of yes, push on all the other layers of the institution, but we have tools and people right now that'll provide that energy for you. Push on each other's thinking. So let's look for ways to come together, open up your classroom, push on each other's thinking, and let's create this movement. That's why we're here today.
Thanks, Marcus. So as leaders, we have power, we have influence. Some of you have shared that we might want to start with having some risky, tough conversations at our homes, in our communities. What else might we be able to commit to as individuals to move this forward?
I guess two things come to mind for me. One is I continue to be struck, and the movie struck me this way again, how despite the fact that I think everyone in the room, I'm not going to do what Macy does and ask you what you think, but I think most of us understand how much influence teachers have, and it can be for harmful, terribly harmful things happen inadvertently or intentionally in classrooms all the time that people remember 30, 40, 50 years later, something a teacher said about, you're not going to go to college, or you're not good at math. But also amazingly wonderful things can happen in those moments that turn people around, and all the other things in between. Teachers have an incredible amount of power, and yet the society continues to work around teachers all of the time. Everything we come up with doesn't have to do with teachers. It's bizarre, actually. I mean, the movie, I don't know, maybe you'll disagree with me, said very little about teaching. Very, very little about it. It was about how exciting and engaging we can create things for students to do, the kinds of things they can do in their community, how they can be centered. But who does that work? Who creates the environments for that kind of work to happen in school? Who pushes back on the structures that we've inherited inside of schools to make that possible? It's pretty silent about that. So I'm going to commit to continue to try to get other people to understand how critical teaching is, and how way underinvested we are as a country in the work lives of teachers, in the structures of teachers' work, and the kind of learning. Several school districts where I work around the country provide like 2 days of professional learning in a school year. Like no other occupation of any kind, let alone of the importance of teaching, would ever think that that's the way you support a profession. It's really strange. So the public discourse about this needs work. And the other thing I'll say briefly, because I think my colleagues will either pick it up or not, or you can, is we aren't talking nearly enough about families. Families know a lot about their children. We say that all the time, but in my summer teaching experience this year, I was struck again about how important it was for families to hear from teachers what they saw in their children, that they're constantly in a deficit discourse. Your child doesn't know this yet. Your child is below here. We need to help them with this. What I heard from families was just hearing us talk about what their children did that was brilliant was like huge for them. And it made me wonder, like, what is the discourse they're hearing about their children? And what are we learning about what children are doing at home that we say we want to know, but I don't know that we build on nearly enough. So I think families and teachers were somewhat missing, if I'm going to be critical, but also where I'm going to commit to try to leverage the kind of ways that I can work to build attention to those and listening to those.
Okay. I'm going to jump there because I want to shout out my PK colleagues who are in the audience right now. We have a lot of them. And I think, like in education, we have had a tendency to push down, and this is a place where we could push up. Like pre-K people have figured out how to work with families, how to learn from families, how to bring families into classrooms, how to talk to families in respectful ways. And there's an opportunity as we're bringing pre-K classrooms into elementary schools to like lift that practice up. There are people in the room who know how to do this. And then the other thing I would say is like, what is it we can do going forward? I think like deciding what your work is going to be. Like for me right now, the question that's productive is who is being harmed today and what can I do to mitigate it? And I do that like in a very close-up way in my family, in my workplace settings, and I am trying to do it like nationally. It's sort of overwhelming, and globally overwhelming right now. You can't take on everything, but to the extent that I can, that's what's motivating me right now.
I was just going to be really quick and do a shameless plug for Amy and I's breakout session, which is
That's gonna fix everything.
it really will. It really, so a perfect teaser. But one of the ways in which I'm thinking about how, like very specifically in the lane of math education, is thinking about what to do about other spaces and places that call themselves a movement, such as the science of math, and how we can get smarter. I think we can promise we're not going to preach too much.
But I can't promise that.
I'll promise that, because part of what we want to do is gift the community with a resource for you to understand when people are making research claims and calling themselves science, what does that mean? And so part of it to me is getting smarter about some of the politics and decision making that is in our lane, which is what do you do when you have legislators or other folks who see something like the science of math and are trying to make sense of it, and how do we get smarter about that? So shameless plug, 10 o'clock, I don't know, yeah.
I really appreciated the talk yesterday from Maisie and Amy, particularly around the set, right? We talk about counting and how simple it seems, but what is in the set? And it seems like that's much of what we're navigating up here, is what is in our set as we're influencing education and influencing that space for our kids. There's a lot of different ways we can navigate that. But if we do center our children as thinkers, as individuals, as who they need to be, we also need to think about that at scale. So for me, that set includes this work that's being done across the state. We're like-minded people in this space. We've got common tools, events, resources. Thank you, Allison. But I think of, I had a conversation with Jill Griffin a couple of years ago from MDE, and I really appreciated her just advocating about saturating the space. So as we think about these values for math specifically and what it means to develop their humanity, their identity, math is a broad creative subject, how are we creating the spaces for that at the top? MDE, legislation, our early math team, our ISDs. In my opinion, they're doing a fantastic job of structuring these tools and opportunities for us. But we're all part of this larger system to scale what we deeply believe to be true for kids. So at that early math level, we come down to ISDs. Is your ISD developing tools and common principles for messy learning, robust experiences for our local districts, from professional learning, from coaching, mentoring, these other opportunities? Are ISDs on board with this type of learning? We move down a scale from there. Math consultants, I know that the early math work has been really valuable for us as math consultants across the state. Really fortunate to work with a great team, and it's created a common tools for us to talk around. So I can have a conversation with Amanda and Jessica, and we can talk about what that looks like in your space to bring these math essentials to life. And I'll tell you, there's a lot of power in that, because we're speaking the same language, we have the common vision of what that looks like, and we're tweaking it to our local context to have that impact. We haven't even reached down to the school district level. So when you're a principal or a classroom teacher, it's our responsibilities at the ISDs and all through these levels to be a part of this system to help you add that value for the kids. We love hearing your thoughts. And someone earlier brought up the top down, but also the bottom up. I think it was Amy. We really need that from our local districts and families too. So when those structures are being designed at the state level, we need to know the reality of what it feels like for you. So when we talk about stepping into your power and owning your voice, it's with your students and your classmates, but let's also include that set to make sure we're informing the practices and structures that you need to do the best work for the kids.
We are just saying up here, in terms of a practical thing you can do, the education budget in the state is up in the air right now, and money is about to be clawed back. So if you would like education to be funded in Michigan, now would be a really great time to reach out to your local state representatives to get people in your community to do it and to see if we can sustain this enterprise.
In closing, is there anything else that you would like to say? A final thought, something that you want to stick with us as we leave?
I just want to reiterate, thank you for, I'm going to speak at least for my university colleagues, and then just take it back if I say the wrong thing. Deborah will, absolutely. But I want to say thank you for allowing allowing us to come here year after year and be a part of a community and part of people that you trust. We don't take that responsibility lightly. So I think there's a sense of gratitude. Thank you for your generosity this morning and listening to what we have to say. We are just 3 people. I'm really curious what you have to say, but just thank you. I hope you continue to come back to this space. And the question of, did you go the first year, the second year, the third year? Like, this is what it is. This is the work. It's the relationships in the community that we build and the ability for me to feel like, oh, the year is starting because Early Math Institute is happening. So thank you for being a part of this space, this ritual, these events. So it's just a sense of gratitude that I want to share.
And just to add on to that, if you could join us in thanking the leaders of this community. It's
Yes.
amazing. It's very, very rare. It's very rare to see something this sustained and this thoughtful in a state. And I work in several different states. It's very, very rare. And that you all deserve just huge gratitude from us, not only for allowing us to come, but for continuing to create the space and the tools and the resources and the discourse. So thank you.
I agree. We have so many pockets of excellence here, and that's what's exciting for us to come together. Step into your voice, hold that identity, but be bold. Have the conversations with people that you need to have to advocate for kids. When you hear someone in the lunchroom talking poorly about kids, you have that responsibility now. You're a part of this cohort, this community, and we advocate for kids. So step into that power, continue to advocate for yourself, and let's scale this together.
Thank you so much to our panelists and to all of you for leaning into this conversation. Meaningful change in math education is urgent and ongoing. And one key takeaway that I'm taking away is that as leaders, as education leaders across the state, we shouldn't despair. We have a voice, we have influence, and we have power. We can work collectively and individually to sustain this movement in Michigan. So thank you to you all once again.